The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
What I learned about this buck is that he was a survivor. And what I mean about that he was really particular about going through areas and watching out for his own skin. And he would let other deer go before him many times before he would deem an area to be safe that he could go through.
Economically, it's a real good way, really wise way to farm. I think it's saving the soil, it's saving me money, and it's allowing me to maintain top yields.
The open prairie of the Upper Midwest is home and a destination for people who love the outdoors, to hunt, fish, and enjoy outdoor recreation provided by our vast resources of lakes, rivers, trails, and grasslands. Here we connect with the natural world and leave the stresses of our daily lives behind.
Welcome to Prairie Sportsman. I'm your host, Brett Amundson.
In this episode, we follow the adventures of accomplished bow hunter Chris Oslin pursuing a trophy whitetail buck. Chris shows us how he captured the experience on film. Then we're in the tractor with Ed Hegland, who demonstrates a minimum tillage system that promotes healthier soils and wildlife habitat. All on this episode of Prairie Sportsman.
Funding for this project was provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund as recommended by the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources and by American Surplus, Ice Castle Fish House RV, Minnesota's largest manufacturer of premium portable ice fish houses and a proud supporter of the annual February Ice Castle Classic Fishing Tournament. More information at icecastlefh.com. And by Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in West Central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com.
Over the years, Chris Oslin has had a lot of memorable experiences hunting trophy whitetail in western Minnesota. But when he drew his sights on one particularly cunning buck, he didn't know he was in for the hunt of a lifetime. He named the buck Dodger, long before he would come to know just how appropriate that name was.
The first year I had an encounter with him was 2012. I was hunting on private land on our farm, and I didn't even know at the time that it was a buck I was going to be hunting because he was 2.5 years old. And I had let him walk. He came right by my stand during an October hunt. But I was hunting two other bucks that were 3.5 or 4.5 that were bigger. I was fortunate enough to find the buck's right side when he was a 2.5-year-old. So this was the first. This is what he had on his head the first year I had an encounter with him. So the second year in 2013. Boom, this big buck shows up as a 3.5-year-old and as a 4x5, and right away I put money on it that it had to be. At the time, so I didn't name Dodger until he was a 3.5-year-old when he got a really big set of antlers on him, and then I started, okay, this is a buck I want to try and take. He was one of the biggest bucks on the farm during that year. So the second year when I named Dodger the Dodger buck and was hunting him and just him. I had passed a potential shooter before that early in the season, just waiting for the Dodger buck. And later on in December, I finally got a shot at him, and he came out just before closing, and I knew I was going to get the shot. And it was really it was pretty still. It wasn't very windy, so I could almost hear the deer walking as they came by me because there was snow on the ground. And I was able to get the bow drawn back and got the pin on his vitals and everything. And when I hit that release, there's a little thud sound that the string makes as the string leaves the claws of the release. And that buck heard that, and he was going to take off, and his front leg slipped on the snow, and that lowered his body, and that arrow shot right over his back.
And we tracked him the next morning and found just a little bit of blood. It was like just a couple of pin drops every 10 or 20 yards, so nothing really bad. So I'm sure he's fine. But the funny thing is, I found our arrow this morning. It's sticking in the snow here on the lake. And of course it's frozen, but... Alright, we got this arrow. And you can see, maybe not, there's a little bit of hair on there. There's maybe a little trace of blood right there, but... So we maybe nicked him a little bit, but... Looks okay otherwise.
Whitetails are pretty tough that way. You know, they can take an injury. It takes a lot to kill a whitetail. You got to hit them in the boiler room, and especially in the lungs, or get the liver, or the heart, obviously. But they can survive a lot, actually. This antler here, I was fortunate enough to get a hold of this one too. And this is when he was a 3.5-year-old. And then the following year, he, 4.5 years old, he blew up into a really nice 5x5. Started showing up on camera again, doing the same routines again. So it was going to be all or nothing that year for that buck. And especially after I missed him, I really cranked it up that I really wanted to get him, being after you miss him, of course. And came back and checked trail cameras, and to my astonishment, I had people on my trail camera, and it was the camera I had set up where the area he was using, going into a bedding area. And what had happened was they must have hit him. During the gun season, they were trying to recover him, and I could see blood on his belly. So then I realized, oh no, he'd been wounded by gun hunters. And so then I came to the realization, two things are going to happen. One, this buck is dead, and it's game over already. Or two, he's going to survive his wounds, and I don't know if I'll see him again after that. Later on, about maybe 10 days after that, I did see him. He was alive and well. Looked like he was doing okay after being hit. And so I thought, okay, great. He survived. He isn't dead. And so the hunt was on again. I already had a ladder stand in place, and I had an idea how I was going to go about hunting him. It was an inside corner, and I figured if he could come through there, I'd have a shot. And started hunting him again. It was a really foggy morning, and so fog is an excellent time to hunt deer. And I actually saw the buck, and he was hanging around with another buck, and but it was too far away to get a shot. And then the next day, Sunday, went out there, and I'll say this: you get a feeling about yourself when you're gonna get a kill, that you just have a feeling that, boy, something good is gonna happen. All the stars are gonna line up, all the pieces of the puzzle are gonna come together, and I had that feeling that morning. And so I hunted and started to hunt, and deer started to show back up. The does and all the non-target deer, the 1.5-year-olds. And this other buck he was hanging around, he was a 3.5-year-old, and it was getting late. It was December 21st, and I saw that buck come in, and I was thinking to myself, oh, if this buck comes by, maybe I should shoot this one, because I hadn't seen the Dodger buck that morning. But then all of a sudden he showed up, and I realized, oh, he's right here, and I just had to wait for the right moment. And he got within 30 yards of me when I was in that stand, but I had some branches and stuff in the way, so I couldn't get the shot off. And then he walked away, and in the stand I was at, there was a tree line, because again, I was in an inside corner. And he walked on the one side of the tree line and then came around. And then I realized, oh, here comes a deer, and he was coming around, and I realized it was that buck. And he didn't come right underneath my stand. He kept his distance, but he came through, and I had to shoot. There was a big tree that had fallen down, and I had to shoot through the tree limbs, actually, but he came through one small opening. It was a 30-yard shot, and luckily that's where I had my bow sighted in, and it didn't take very long, but I was able to get drawn. And
I got him. I got him. Well, I just hit that Dodger buck. I think I got him. This is going to be an awesome hunt if I got him. He's right down over in the field, and it looked like it was a good pass through. I'm going to just give him some time. And he ran out in the corn and laid down. Oh my gosh. I hit him good. It was probably like about a 30-yard shot, a 35-yard shot, but oh, that ain't good. He's up again. All I can do is give him time and pray that a fatal hit.
And he was pretty still after that, so it didn't take long. I had taken out the liver and part of his lungs. So your emotions really it's really overwhelming, actually, because you put all this time into this animal, and then when you get them, it's a little sad too, because now the whole saga is over. You did get the animal and harvest them, but now it's over too. So I stayed in my stand and left him out there for, I don't know, almost an hour, and I was really cautious because I did not want this buck giving up and taking off after I put that shot on him. So I wanted to make sure he was down. So I watched him for quite a while to make sure he wasn't moving before I went out there to check him out and everything. I didn't know until after I harvested him that at the time he had a bad experience. He got a Grim Reaper broadhead stuck in his neck, and that's what made that buck a survivor. So he had a bad experience, from a hunter, another hunter. The arrowhead that was stuck in his vertebrae here was found by the taxidermist who mounted him. This part here was made the story of this buck come full circle to me about why he was so hard to hunt, and it was because he had this broadhead stuck in his neck. The Dodger buck was the hardest buck I ever hunted. It's a big chess game, is what it is, and more times than not, the deer wins, and the hunter doesn't, because they have a ways of patterning the hunter before the hunter patterns the buck. But what I learned about this buck is that he was a survivor, and what I mean about that he was really particular about going through areas and watching out for his own skin, and he would let other deer go before him many times before he would deem an area to be safe that he could go through. It was kind of fitting that he got the name Dodger because of everything he missed. I missed him and actually hit him with that arrow and put a scar on his back. Some other hunters put a slug into his belly. He had a broadhead in his neck, so he'd been dodging a lot of a lot of people trying to kill him, so Dodger was a fitting name for him.
My name is Kylie Couture. I work with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. I am here out on White Bear Lake. Another invasive species would be zebra mussels. They were infested in this lake in 2014. We have been monitoring their population growth over the past 2 years and have noticed that they've increased exponentially within the past 2 seasons. They'll basically attach to anything and everything that they can get a hold on, and so this obviously can affect people that want to swim, that might potentially cut their feet or grab onto the ladder next to their dock. In terms of ecological impacts, they will attach to native mussels and basically choke them out. Native mussels are filter feeders similar to zebra mussels, and they're a really good indicator of water quality. And so we actually use them kind of as an indirect way to show how clear or how healthy our water systems are. If there's a lot of native mussels and there's a large diversity of native mussels, that typically means you have high water quality.
Fishermen, recreational boat users, anyone who has watercraft on the lake, the key points to remember are to clean, drain, and dispose.
This segment has been brought to you by the Aquatic Invasive Species Task Forces of Big Stone, Candy, Ojai, and Yellow Medicine counties.
Not only is Chris Oslin an accomplished deer hunter, he is also experienced in the art of self-filming his hunts.
I'm going to just stick these in the ground. When I hunt on the ground, I bring a seat along. Here's a GoPro Hero 3. This is a popular one for people to film with. Then I also use a Canon Vixia G10. This is a HD camera. And then I also will use a Canon Vixia R400. So I'll bring 3 cameras out with me when I hunt. This is a camera called Tacticam. This is an actual camera too. It's a one-shot camera. I just hit a button and it starts filming. This tripod right here fits right in this bag that I bring out here. And I'll just show you how we're going to set that up. It has nice long legs on it. And so we can set that up. So I have maybe a shooting lane here and a shooting lane over here, so I can easily, just pivot the camera over here or have it focused here. But I have this camera set up. I'm not going to be moving it around. So all I have to do is reach up, hit the power button, and hit the recorder if an animal comes in that I may want to take. I'll have a secondary camera. So this camera, I will film action shots of the deer coming in. Another thing I'll do with this small camera is I can film myself and just say, give yourself an interview to tell what's going on. These GoPros are made for really tight shots, so I will set up the GoPro on a tree or something right next to me or in a stand, point it at me so I can film myself going through the actions of maybe drawing my bow. If we have a good buck coming in and I want to film this, the first thing I'll do is turn on the shot camera. Then I'll reach over here and turn on the point of view camera. Then I can grab the action cam as he comes in. And as he gets close enough to come in and I want to get ready for a shot, I'll just set this down. Grab my bow so I'm ready, and I have this camera running already, and then I'm all set to go.
In the agricultural regions of the upper Midwest, farming fuels the economy. But modern production practices have sometimes incited controversy between conservationists and landowners. That doesn't mean farming and natural resource conservation can't coexist. Farmers like Ed Hageland of rural Appleton, Minnesota, are using practices like strip till, which benefits both soil health and wildlife habitat. And ultimately, Ed's bottom line. After the fall harvest, Ed tills narrow strips where he will plant crop rows next spring. At the same time, he applies fertilizer where soil tests indicate it's needed. In between the strips, the ground is not tilled, which saves money, prevents topsoil from blowing away, and provides habitat for pheasants, turkeys, and other wildlife.
Well, I can pretty easily do 250 to 300 acres in a day, and so it does a nice job of covering the ground quickly. As long as the machinery holds together and the weather cooperates, it doesn't take probably 4 or 5 days. I can have everything done. So I like to tell people what this really is full tillage. You're just doing it in strips, right where your corn is going to be planted, right in that row. I started experimenting with it about 10 years ago. I had a neighbor who had a piece of equipment that I tried on just a few acres and really liked it. It allowed me to get across the ground nicely. It allows for better water infiltration into the soil. And it really, it's really good for wildlife. I see lots of earthworms in the soil. What this monitor here, this SPG, does is it uses RTK guidance, very precise guidance, so it'll keep me an inch off, less than an inch off from end to end, and repeatable. So next spring when I plant corn, I will be right exactly on this strip again, all the way from end to end. It remembers it till next year, so I can just punch in the field that I'm on, and it guides me up and down. And this other smaller monitor is what is doing the variable rate fertilizer. I've entered in maps. My agronomist has put maps in there, and you can see the different colors on there that tells it how much fertilizer to be putting on in each spot in the field. And so you don't put on more than what's needed for the productivity of that soil, of that spot in the field. And so it saves economically there. The strip till greatly reduces the chance of nutrient runoff because I'm, rather than laying it on top of the soil and no tilling, which I think has its benefits, but this is putting the fertilizer down in the soil where the roots will be, and I'm not digging the ground real deep, and so there's a less chance of water runoff when you get a big rain event. The economics of farming this way are tremendous. I'm able to get by with so much less equipment. I don't have that big tractor. I don't have a big four-wheel drive tractor. I don't have a chisel plow. I don't have a disc ripper. I don't have a plow. This allows me with one machine. It's a very expensive machine, but still, when you weigh it out, it's way less than having all those other implements and tractors sitting in the shed. It takes more management. You can't just throw out your teenage child or a retired neighbor to go out and do the tillage. You really need to be in the tractor, in the machine, watching all the adjustments and making all the adjustments and watching the monitor. It does cost some money to have that variable rate testing done, but I think it's something that even people that do full width tillage should be doing to reduce their costs of over-fertilizing areas that don't produce. Economically, it's a real good way, really wise way to farm, I think. It's saving the soil, it's saving me money, and it's allowing me to maintain top yields.
You asked and we listened. I'm Amanda Anderson, Digital Media Specialist for Prairie Sportsman. The Q&A section of each episode is powered by questions from Prairie Sportsman viewers. This week's question is, can someone who is a Pheasants Forever member hunt on land identified as Pheasants Forever project land?
Jared Wicklund, Public Relations Manager for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Since 1982, Pheasants Forever has completed almost 190,000 acres of land acquisition projects that are now open for public access, hunting, and other recreation. All Pheasants Forever land acquisitions will be marked with public hunting signs once acquisition and management efforts have been completed. We do have signs that say things such as Pheasants Forever Habitat Cooperator or Pheasants Forever Management Area to show that Pheasants Forever has supported a project on their property. These areas are not open to members for hunting access unless permission has been granted by an individual landowner.
Thanks for asking.
Have something to ask us? Email questions to prairiesportsman@pioneer.org or use hashtag AskPS on Facebook and Twitter, and visit our blog for more Q&A. Thanks for tuning in to Prairie Sportsman, and be sure to get outdoors this week.
Funding for this project was provided by the Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, as recommended by the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources, and by American Surplus, Ice Castle Fish House RV, Minnesota's largest manufacturer of premium portable ice fish houses, and a proud supporter of the annual February Ice Castle Classic Fishing Tournament. More information at icecastlefh.com. And by Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in West Central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com.